Welcome to the Tuesday edition of the 14. I'm your host, Chris Lee. Blake Lovell with me today, Barry Allen with me today. We are mostly going to talk baseball, but first, we've got some significant basketball news, and Blake, I'll just turn it to you for that.
Yeah, we've talked about Sahvir Wheeler transferring from Georgia, and at the time we talked about how big of a significant transfer that was. But now you've had so many other guys transfer from Georgia that it's even more significant. But he will get to play Georgia this season because he is headed to Kentucky, and that just I think adds another element to a Kentucky team that we kind of teased it, I guess, about a couple months ago. This is the Cal Revenge Tour is officially in full force here because he has got quite a roster that he has compiled there. We talk about all the guys that he's added this offseason. He's just got a really, really talented team. And I think Sahvir Wheeler, someone who I think it was easy to pick apart some of the numbers and say he wasn't as efficient in this type of stuff as some of the other players. But I think you have to remember, and I brought this up, the group around him was not necessarily, I don't know that they necessarily used him the best, and maybe there was a lot on his shoulders. So I think there's going to be a lot on his shoulders at Kentucky, but I just think it's probably a better situation in terms of actually seeing how good a player he is. Because I just think, at Georgia, like we said, yes, his percentages and such were not great, but I think that also kind of goes into the success of the team a bit. And that was just a team that, as we talked about, had struggled quite a bit at times throughout the season. So I feel like this is going to be one where you're actually going to see, just how good this kid is because, he's going to be surrounded by some guys that are pretty talented. And I think it's just, probably a situation where he gets some opportunities that maybe better fit how he can play, the style of play, those types of things. And that's not knocking Georgia or Tom Crean for how they used him, but I just think it's probably a case where you're going to see him, be in a better position that maybe fits his skill set a bit. So it's a significant addition. There's no doubt for Kentucky because now all of a sudden they become a team that they're going to be right up there competing for an SEC title and probably going to have a chance to make a pretty deep run in the NCAA tournament given the roster.
Yeah, the field goal efficiency was the thing that we had an issue with a year ago. He shot 42.3% in an effective field goal percentage that waits for the three from the field last year, which is abysmal. The year before, he shot 50.2, which is acceptable. Now, one difference might have been there was a big-time NBA player on the roster the first year and not the second. So, again, teammates around him may be the difference here, as you pointed out. Now, he does shoot pretty well from the foul line, 73% as a sophomore, 70% as a freshman. He shot almost 52% from three as a freshman also. He shot 45 last year. Three-point percentage was where it went poorly for him. He shot 23% on 79 attempts a year ago. I think that's something that probably he either has to improve or maybe you mostly cut it out of the game. So I think there are paths to improvement that you can see based on his past and based on the roster that he's going to be on.
Sometimes a bad shot for one guy is better than a good shot for another guy. And I think that
good point. And when you are down late in the shot clock and your point guard's got the ball in his hands, sometimes that's the guy who's got to jack one up and kill his percentages when your other alternatives are not good. And maybe that's overstating it. I don't know. But you make a really good point there.
Well, and I think that's the thing is that's what I try to look at in some of those situations. I mean, it's different at every place, but I think, again, and this is not because we've said, I mean, Georgia's lost some good players. I mean, with Katie Johnson and Garcia and all these other guys that have transferred out, Justin Kier. But I think, overall, it's just a situation where he probably had to take some shots that most people probably were not put in that position to take. So, yeah, I think that's probably one thing we look at as he makes the transition to Kentucky, which, like we said, certainly it's going to be a much different situation just based on, roster and all of that. But I'm very curious to see kind of how that works out for him there because, again, if he's the type of player we think he can be, it should be a pretty good spot and give Kentucky a pretty good chance to be right back up there at the top of the SEC. So.
And my understanding, Abdul Ado has left Mississippi State or is leaving.
Yeah, Mississippi State added Shaquille Moore from NC State's guard. He was a freshman last year, averaged about 7 points per game, played about 20 minutes a game. So they bring one in, but they are losing Abdul Adu, who's going to wind up joining Cincinnati, I'm pretty sure at this point. So he's going to head to Cincinnati. I mean, we talked about Adu over the years, someone that just with the size, 6'10", 6'11", could do a lot of different things for them. I think last year averaged around 6 and 7. But I mean, it's one of those two where we've just seen it. I mean, there's so many changes roster wise, and this Mississippi State team, we thought coming into next season was going to look, one way. I think it's going to probably look a little different, especially with DJ Stewart out of the mix too now. So I think, they're one again. I'm probably going to go back to and say, well, I felt pretty strongly about them at one point. Now maybe, you have to dive a little bit deeper into what they could actually look like going into next season. So I don't know that, losing Stewart's the big part. And again, Adu, someone who made some contributions in the paint just because of his size and such. But it'll be interesting to see kind of what Mississippi State's rotation looks like. I think Moore, who's coming in, he'll factor into the mix. Very talented, kid who's just going to be, a sophomore. So I think it'll be interesting to see kind of what things look like there for Mississippi State. But are they going to be as strong as we thought they would be? I think without Stewart, it's hard to project that. But who knows? Maybe they are able to kind of make their way up into that top 4, top 5 of the SEC.
So the official count on the transfer portal as of this moment, 1603, according to verbal commits.
1603. I remember back when I was projecting it, I'd probably stop around 1400. Now we're at 1603 and we are still going. I think you'll still have transfers probably into June, and there'll be more after that. Like that's just how this works now. So yeah, I think it's one of those where it's like, I don't even know how you start projecting, ahead to next season just based on, rosters are still not completed. And, look, we still got think about it. We still got the whole draft process to go through too. Like we don't even know. Some of these guys are going to wind up coming, like Darius Days. He's one we thought's gone. Like I'm starting to wonder if maybe he winds up coming back. There's a lot of different things like that I think are still to be determined. And there's just, I don't know, there are a lot of situations where I think some of these draft moves are really going to significantly, move the needle one way or the other for some of these teams. So, until we get through the draft process, we're not going to know exactly what the roster is going to look like at all.
Let's see. Remy Martin has landed at Kansas from Arizona State. That's a big one. Of course, not in the SEC, but that's a name that was out there. That'll be a big addition for Kansas. Anything else on the topic of basketball, Blake?
Nope, just more transfers. Like we said, I think the NBA draft process, that is the thing to keep an eye on at this point. Yes, there'll still be transfers, but that's where you start to figure out who's coming back and who is not. So,
couple of football transfers, this per our intern, Billy Jones. By Darius Knighton, who was a 2-time all-conference safety at Southeast Missouri State, has landed at Auburn. And former 4-star Alabama DB Brandon Turnage is at Georgia. So a couple of football-related notes. Anything else on the other sports before we hit baseball, Blake?
Nope. Get to the diamond.
All right, let's get to the diamond. Barry Allen, you and I were talking before we did the podcast, and we kind of see this alike. This is going to be the weirdest year ever for the SEC potentially. And I don't think this is the way it's going to happen, but there is a chance, Barry, that the SEC could get 7 teams in the NCAA tournament and no more, and every one of them would be hosting.
Yeah, that's a very distinct possibility. I mean, Alabama and LSU, still feel like they have good resumes and, high enough up in the RPIs to, make a case to get in. I just don't know if they're going to have enough SEC wins to do it. And if that's the case, Tennessee, Vanderbilt, Florida, South Carolina, gets in from the East, and Arkansas, Ole Miss, and Mississippi State get in from the West, and they all could be, they could all be hosting. They're all high in the RPI, even this morning. I think Ole Miss is as high as 12 this morning. That certainly would seem to be a host. I don't know if that could be a national seed at this point, but I think they're going to finish, 5th or 6th or so in the league, and that may prohibit them from doing that. But you got Arkansas 1, Vanderbilt 4, Mississippi State 7, Tennessee 9, South Carolina 11, Ole Miss 12. LSU's 18 now. Here they keep climbing up. And then you got Alabama at 25. So you got possibilities of having a lot of teams in the mix. And I think it'll all shake out this weekend with how the standings finish up, because you still got theoretically 5 teams are still in contention for their divisional titles, although some are not as good a chances as others. But there's still 5 teams that have a chance to win their division titles this weekend. And I think the pecking order in the league, who finishes 1 through 5, 6, somewhere like that, how will that affect, who hosts and who doesn't?
All right. Tell me if this is how you see it. Arkansas, I think, could lose out and probably still be a national seed, top 8.
Well, I don't think they're going to lose out, but yeah.
I'm accounting for all the possibilities. Yeah.
If they lost 3 games to Florida this weekend, I don't see any way how they're not a national seed. Yeah. But I just don't see this team messing up. I mean, I just don't see it. I think by Thursday night they could have the division and the league clinched, and they certainly could do it by Friday.
Yeah, I think Arkansas really only needs to win 2 games to clinch the whole thing. Once they do that, which I think, by the way, for the record, I think is what's going to happen. I think Arkansas is going to probably take 2 or 3 from Florida this weekend and win the whole thing. I guess the point, I'll state it a little differently. I think Arkansas has locked in so much already that even losing out, they're still going to be a host for sure. They're still going to be a national seed. Vanderbilt is close to the same boat. I think if Vanderbilt lost all 3 this weekend to Kentucky and then maybe lost a couple games in Hoover and finished 0-5, the Commodores might drop from a national seed to a host. But again, Vanderbilt right there. I think Vandy wins the series this weekend against Kentucky, and it's going to be hosting 2 weekends of baseball, provided it wins the first. Tennessee, I think, kind of close to the same boat. The Vols are going to host. They're 18-9 in the league. But that trip to South Carolina, Barry, I think interesting for both clubs, because I think if Carolina wins 2 or 3 against Tennessee, that RPI already 11, it's not going to go down. I think Carolina would be a very solid host at that point too, don't you?
Especially the way they played last week, excuse me, even though it was against Kentucky. Still a weird team to figure out, this South Carolina team. I think they're good, but they just are so inconsistent. They had that great start and then a 7-game losing streak, and then you sweep Florida, and then you kind of struggle through a little bit with some of these other teams. And, then you had murderer's row of, Arkansas, Ole Miss, Mississippi State back to back. And, they lost 6 of those 9, and who wouldn't? And then they, get sweep Kentucky this weekend. I think it's big for them. I think if they win 2 out of 3 from Tennessee at home this weekend, I think they have a legitimate argument to be a host. I think they're 17-13. They'll have a series win over Tennessee. They'll have a win over Vanderbilt, a sweep over Florida. And then 1 win each over Arkansas, Mississippi State, and Ole Miss. And I'd invite anybody else to bring that resume to the table, and anywhere else, bring me those wins to the table. And if you've got better wins than South Carolina does, then we'll give you the nod. But I don't know that anybody else could say that. Not in this league. I mean, we're not comparing South Carolina to Florida here. We're comparing them to other teams. So I would think 2 out of 3 this weekend for South Carolina would be a serious plus for them in getting one of the 16 spots.
Yeah, and again, 2 out of 3 would put Carolina at 17-13 and leaving the weekend a top 10 RPI. Now, I don't know how that changes in Hoover, but I would think, and you would know this better than I, that almost all the time that's good enough to get you a host.
You would think so, but here's a weird thing about South Carolina. They've made the SEC tournament every year they've been in the league. They're the only team that's been in every year since 1992. And they're in there again this year. Now, there was 2 years ago, they had to they had to slide in on the seat of their pants because they somehow miraculously won a game at Mississippi State and were able to get by Kentucky and Alabama, who there was a three-way tie going, I think, into the last weekends of the season. And of course, Kentucky and Alabama, I think got swept, and South Carolina somehow miraculously won a game at Mississippi State on the last day of the season and jumped in there with 8 or 9 wins and got in, but they got in. But their history in the tournament is not that good. They don't play well there. I know they went to the finals one year and lost to Alabama. I think they went to the finals one year and lost to Vanderbilt. They just don't play well in Hoover, and they had a stretch. I haven't looked at it. We'll take a look at it later this week, and maybe Mondays we get into the tournament. But I think they had a stretch where they went 3 or 4 years and didn't win a game. So they're not that the SEC tournament's going to affect them, but I think going into that last week, if they're close to somebody, they don't need a 2-and-out in Hoover either. I mean, if they could get to Thursday or Friday, that would further cement their deal. I'm not saying 0-2 would kill them, but 2-2 is better than 0-2, and I think that would further cement them getting in. They need a decent showing in Hoover, something that they don't traditionally do when they get there.
Okay, let's talk Mississippi State a minute. The RPI at 7. Just for argument's sake, let's say Alabama takes 2 or 3 this weekend. I still think State hosts. Now, top 8 seed, I don't know about that. Would you still call those national seeds, by the way? Have they changed the terminology on that?
That's what I still call them. I don't know what they call them, but
what do we think? Let's just say, for argument's sake, State loses 2 or 3 against Alabama. I guess there's a lot of other variables there, including other teams around the country and Hoover performance. But where does that put State, you think, if that were to happen? I mean, again, I can't see Starkville not being a host site, but I do wonder what that does to the Bulldogs if that were to happen. And I'm not saying that it would. I think that State probably wins that series. But it is interesting to ponder what would happen given what happened with Missouri last weekend if the Bulldogs were to lose 2 or 3 at Alabama.
Well, I'm not a huge what-if guy, but I do like to stir the pot. And so we'll say stir the pot. And, okay, say they go 1-2 and they're 18-12, and Ole Miss rolls over to Georgia and goes 3-0 and goes 19-11, and Arkansas wins the series with Florida and finishes 21-9. All of a sudden, State finishes 3rd in the West. They're 3rd in the West. Now what happens to the other side? Vanderbilt sweeps Kentucky 20-9. Tennessee let's say they lose 2 out of 3 at South Carolina. They finish 19-11, and Florida finishes 18-12. Well, now all of a sudden, Mississippi State's 18-12, Florida's 18-12. Now all of a sudden, Florida and Mississippi State are tied for 5th overall. Both fall out of the top 4. Both have to play now on Tuesday in the tournament. Florida and Mississippi, and I don't know how that tiebreaker works because they didn't play each other, and that's not so. Are you a national seed if you play on the first day of the SEC tournament? How do they determine that? Can you be a top 8 national seed if you play on Tuesday in your conference tournament? You're not one of the top 4 buys. And if you only get 7 teams in the tournament and 7 teams host, might be a stretch to give the SEC more than 3 or 4 national seeds. And I would think, based on all that pot stirring we just did right there, that Tennessee, Vanderbilt, Arkansas, and Mississippi, that Arkansas and Ole Miss. Now, the only caveat between State and Ole Miss is, and when I'm also a pot stirrer, I'm also a head-to-head guy, and Mississippi State beat Ole Miss head up. Now, Mississippi State didn't beat Arkansas, and Mississippi State didn't beat Vanderbilt, and it's not their fault they didn't play Tennessee. But if you're splitting hairs, to me, one of the big things I look at is, did you play each other? Yes. And then how did you do? Oh, you didn't win any games, or you lost your series. That plays a role to me. To me, it does. It may not play the role to the committee, but even though Ole Miss might finish higher than Mississippi State in the standings by 1 game, still head up, Mississippi State won that series. Now, Ole Miss could have won the series, but they didn't. And they played really well, but they didn't win. And so that to me, I think, has to factor in a little bit in picking that. Now, I don't know if that'll factor in with the committee or not. I know Ole Miss lost the series to Mississippi State in Starkville. Might have a little more weight had they lost the series in Oxford, but it was on the road. So that would be an interesting thing. Can a team that opens the tournament on Tuesday, not in the top 4, get a top 8 national seed? And if it comes down to the 4th spot, they're going to get 4. Do they give it to Ole Miss because they finished higher than Mississippi State in the standings, or do they give it to Mississippi State because they beat Ole Miss head up? I think those are questions that I think the committee has to look at, and I hope they do, and I hope they take very serious consideration. What do you feel? How do you feel about that?
Well, here's the way I look at it. Okay, you get when you're trying to compare and put together a field, you can kind of tie yourself up in knots when you do head-to-head comparisons. So the way I look at it first, and I'm guessing this is the way the committee does it too, is you've got to put everybody on the same scale first, and you only go head-to-head when you got two teams that are just in a deadlock that you cannot separate. So to me, that comes into play probably if Ole Miss and State are tied, right? So, like, if something happens, let's say Ole Miss goes to Georgia, sweeps the series, and ends up a game ahead of State, right? I don't know that the scale comes into play there because the RPIs are going to be really similar. In fact, Ole Miss might be ahead at that point. So if you're just looking and comparing teams to the field, Ole Miss may have leapt over State under that scenario. Again, we're not saying it's going to happen, but we're just trying to look at the possibilities because that's what makes the last weekend interesting going into it is trying to unwind how all these possibilities may play out. So to me, the tiebreaker does not come into place unless those two teams are probably tied. No, they may see it differently. There may be out-of-conference wins, and let's look at that for just a minute because both those teams have some good ones early in March. You got State, took one from Texas, took another one from Texas Tech, lost one to TCU by 1 run. You go to Ole Miss, and let's see, the Rebels beat Texas, beat TCU, and beat Texas Tech. So South Carolina comes out a little bit ahead there. It's not South Carolina, Ole Miss. Out of conference, other than that, for Ole Miss, not a lot to hang your hat on. For State, let's see. Not a lot in terms of top 50 wins other than that for States. I think under that comparison, Ole Miss probably comes out a little bit ahead. Now, I want to go back to your comparison with Florida. I think under the scenario that you outlined, we might have a tie between Florida and Mississippi State. Did I hear you correctly?
Yeah, it could be if Florida, just say you said Mississippi State loses 2 out of 3 this weekend. They're 18-12. Florida loses 2 out of 3 at Arkansas. They finish 18-12. So they would tie, I guess, in the way we break this in our pot stirring here, they would be tied for 5th. One would be 5th and one would be 6th.
Yeah, and they didn't play each other, so they don't have that available. So then it goes back to the top of the standings. State got swept by Arkansas. And Florida will play Arkansas this weekend. So if Florida were to get a win,
they would be 5.
Yeah, and by chance, if Florida gets swept and they're still tied under some scenario, which I guess would include both of them getting swept, it would go to Vandy. State lost 2 or 3 against Vanderbilt. Florida took 2 out of 3. So under just about any scenario, if State and Florida wind up being tied, Florida is going to get the edge.
Yeah, and we're saying if State loses 2 out of 3, I really, truly believe they're going to win 2 out of 3. And I might not be shocked. Well, I said last week I wouldn't have been shocked if they swept, but the way they played against Missouri, I mean, they very easily could come in here and lose, come to Tuscaloosa and lose 1 and could come in here and lose 2 the way they played last week. So nothing's for sure. But I think realistically 19-11 is where Mississippi State's probably going to end up. And then that would tie them with Ole Miss. Florida's probably realistically going to end up 18-12. So that would tie Mississippi State and Ole Miss for 4th in the league, and State would win the tiebreaker. They would get the bye. Ole Miss would be the 5. and that would probably separate those teams as far as national seeds are concerned. But you're talking about the RPIs for State and Ole Miss. You look at those two teams. They got 22 combined wins against quad 4 teams this year. Mississippi State's 11-1. Their only loss came to Kent State, and Ole Miss is 11-0. They got a lot of SWAC and MAC wins. Both teams do, lots of them. So they're pretty even in that. The state has a quad 3 win over ULL. 2 losses to Missouri, so they're 2-2 in that area, and they're 23-10 in the quadrant 1 and quadrant 2 wins when you're trying to break those teams down. But I would think if they tied for 4th with the resumes being fairly similar, State and Ole Miss, you probably look at head-to-head, and State would probably get the nod in that scenario.
Florida is a really interesting one, Barry, because Florida was one of the teams that was selected as one of the 20 possible hosts. Now, if Florida goes to Arkansas and is able to win 2 out of 3, which I don't think we think will happen, given just how good Arkansas is and how poor Florida has been on the road for the most part. But just for argument's sake, Florida goes and wins up there. Florida is a lock to host at that point. And I'm wondering if national seed starts to come into play. The RPI might still have a little bit to go. They're 20 right now, but I would think that 2 wins at Arkansas, or especially a sweep, which, again, don't think it's going to happen, but accounting for the possibilities, would start inching Florida up into that discussion, if not move it in outright.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they're going to win the series, but if they go 19-11 or even 20-10, that would mean South Carolina would have to win a couple from Tennessee, and Kentucky would have to win a game with Vanderbilt. So in a scenario, Florida could sweep Arkansas, Vanderbilt could lose a game to Kentucky, and Tennessee could lose 2 games at South Carolina, and Florida wins the division.
And I guess the league at that point.
Well, at 20-10, yeah, and then they swept Arkansas.
Yeah.
And Arkansas's 19-11, and Mississippi State, Florida's your SEC champion. They got to be a top 8 seed. I mean,
yeah,
I don't think that's going to happen, but
I don't either. But yeah, but the range for possibilities, and I didn't realize it till we started talking about it for them, is pretty wide, because what if let's say Florida loses out to Arkansas? I don't know what the RPI is then, but I wonder if, a bad showing in Hoover and some other teams getting hot. I mean, Florida does have a series win over Vanderbilt, and it's got one over Ole Miss, so that helps. But this has not been the Gator team we thought we were going to get. So I don't know. I do wonder if Florida really closes on a bad note here, could that knock the Gators out of a host entirely?
It could. Florida can finish 1st or 7th.
Wow.
They can finish anywhere in between. They're going into the series at Arkansas this weekend going, okay, it's a long shot, but we can be the SEC champion. And if we have a bad weekend and things don't go well for us in other venues, we'd be 7th. Be playing the 10 seed on Tuesday. They could be anywhere from 1st to 7th in this deal. And if they tie South Carolina, say they go 18-12, go 1-2, and South Carolina sweeps Tennessee, and they're both 18-12, South Carolina wins that tiebreaker, and that makes Florida 7th in the league. Is that a host? It could host, yeah, but it's not a national seed. The one thing for me, and I don't know that the committee looks at this, but are there any other teams in the state of Florida? And obviously there isn't, because we've got the list. I just cannot see the state of Florida not hosting a regional.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Because if you're talking about regionalizing the regionals, and I think that's what they're going to do, and there's just so many teams in Florida, to not have a regional in Florida, I think is Now, if it's not worthy, it's not worthy. But I think it's just kind of mind-boggling that if one of the spots is not in Florida, just to help with travel, because I'm not saying the NCAA does things out of common sense, but I know one thing they're really consistent with. They're consistent with doing stuff to save a dime. I mean, they'll drive 1,000 miles to save a nickel. Well, you cost you $14,000 to save that nickel. Yeah, but we saved a nickel. Yeah, but you spent $14,000 to do it. So you really lost a bunch of money. But they don't look at it like that. But you've only got one team in Florida. Florida is the only team on the list that could potentially host in the state of Florida. And I know there's going to be teams that get in and you're going to have to fly, but I think they're trying to go as limited as possible this year. I think it'll open back up next year. Let me throw this out just to show you how weird this is. The NCAA Division II went to regional, super regional, College World Series format a couple of years ago. The Division II NCAA regionals are just exactly that. And in baseball, the 8 teams that go to their regional come out of 2 conferences, the Gulf South Conference and the Sunshine Conference. And then 2 years ago, when they had super regionals, they're not doing those this year. They did away with that because of the COVID, and they're just going to go regionals to super regionals. But it used to be four team regionals and then the super regionals. Well, the 4 team regionals, Delta State 2 years ago were 3 Gulf South Conference teams and a Southern States Conference team. And then Tampa hosted the other one, and it was 3 Southern State Conference teams against the Gulf South Conference teams, and the winners of those 2 regionals played in the super regional. So they eliminate all their good teams in the South in 2 weekends, and you end up in Division II with some of these, I don't want to say crappy, but crappy teams that win these Northeast regionals and Northwest. And I think 2 years ago there was a team in the regional that was like 20-16, and they won the regional and the super regional, and they're in Cary in the World Series, and you got 2 40-win Gulf South Conference teams sitting at home. Now that's how they do that in D2, and thank God we don't do it that way in Division I. Could you imagine a regional with SEC and ACC teams and vice versa, and then the winners play, and you get one SEC or one ACC team to Omaha? I mean, these people would riot in Division I. I wish Division II could fix that, but that's how they do it there, to show you how regionalized these other divisions are and how fortunate we are that they're not so regionalized. But I think this year that might be the case. Not putting all the conference teams together, they would not do that. But I just feel like in Florida's case, even if they get swept and they finish 17-13 and they're in the top 5, 6, 7, whatever it is, that I think just because they're the only team on the list from Florida, that's going to probably weigh heavy in trying to get, not try to send a bunch of teams. May not be a bunch of teams in Florida qualify for the tournament. I don't know. But they may be able to say, well, Florida's the only team that's getting in. They're not going to host. We'll send them to East Carolina. And who knows? But you would think Florida would have a little bit of an advantage hosting simply because they're the only team in the state of Florida that's on the list of 20.
Yeah. Okay. Let's rewind a little bit. Okay. Because most years, we've both seen this where the NCAA almost goes straight down the RPI for host spots. You might get a stray 17 or 18, but because of 15 went 14-16 in its league or something like that. But we've seen years where the NCAA goes about as straight down the RPI 1-16 as is possible using common sense. This year, the RPI is not as interconnected as it is most years. You had the MAAC, you had the Big Ten, among others, who did not play out of conference at all. You had the ACC where that was more limited. So the excuse is built in for the RPI to say, well, it doesn't matter as much this year because of that. So I guess that's question number one is how much does that matter? Number two, even under those scenarios, you have seen on occasion where the NCAA says, well, we're looking for geographic balance, and so we're going to give a host here to Washington or Oregon that's 26 in the RPI but was strong in its league. So when they do depart, you see that for reasons of geography. Now with Florida, it might be a little different because there's going to be more regions in the South as it is, and Florida's in that general area of the country. But as you pointed out, Florida's usually got 1, 2, sometimes 3 regionals. So does that play a factor? Number two, if RPI does matter, like we saw this weekend, right? Vanderbilt was 6 in the RPI going to Oxford, loses 2 out of 3, moves up to 4 anyway. I mean, is it possible that Florida goes to Arkansas, loses 2 or 3, even 3 out of 3, and winds up with an RPI that's 17, 18 anyway? Barry, I lost you there.
I said it's possible. Try to tackle the RPI question first. I don't know how they're going to value that RPI. I don't know. And you listen to Kyle Peterson talking on the SEC network games and stuff, and I don't know how much the RPI is going to factor in. I think I'm pretty safe in saying that the number 3 team in the RPI has about as much chance of hosting a regional as the 3 of us have somebody ringing our doorbells in the next hour and giving us $100 million. Fairfield's not going to host. They're going to go on the road. They're going to be a 4 probably, despite being 33-1. So they're in the top 16 and they're not anywhere even close. TCU is now 5, but lost a home series to UL Monroe this weekend in a non-Big 12 game. You kind of look at the geographics, Arizona, Gonzaga, Oregon, Stanford, and I put Texas Tech out there too. I mean, those are kind of 5 Western, 4 West Coast and 1 almost West Coast. There's 5 of your 20 that are out on the West Coast, and that's huge. That helps with travel. Then you got in the South. I'll say South and Southwest area, Southeast, Southwest. You got Arkansas, Charlotte, East Carolina, Louisiana Tech, South Carolina, Tennessee, Texas, TCU, and Vanderbilt. All that conglomeration right in there, and then you have Notre Dame kind of in the Midwest and Pittsburgh in the Northeast, and that's your teams. And so are there enough teams, the majority of the teams are down in this area, from Texas to South Carolina, the Carolinas. One interesting thing with Charlotte's, they're going to host in a not on campus, they're going to host in Gastonia in a new summer league, collegiate summer league park, which would be really cool. It's a new stadium, brand new. They're going to host, they're going to host there in Gastonia, North Carolina. I've been to Spokane. I have never seen a game at Gonzaga, nor have I ever seen Gonzaga play. But Gonzaga has a nice little park, and I think that'll be fun for people out there. Been to the park at Oregon. Obviously, Stanford's a longtime host. Arizona, have been to their stadium, but they're a longtime host as well. So interesting of the placements of these, and with that one in Florida, that just kind of makes me think, well, if there's enough teams in Florida, they can put all 4 teams there. Florida gets it. But if there's not enough teams and there's just a couple, and they say, well, we got to fly teams anyway, why don't we just fly the Gators and Stetson or whoever else from the league? Miami, I think, is going to get in. I could see Florida and Miami playing in a regional in Gainesville. It's like I could see myself eating, chicken wings every night. I mean, I could see that. It's happened before and it'll happen again. And it may happen this year, and it may be an all Florida regional. So it's interesting. And Florida could jump up. I mean, they could go 1-2, and move up. They could go 2-1 and move up. They could go 0-3 and move up. I think beating Arkansas, at least once will help them. I think even 1 out of 3 will bolster their chances and could see them move, from 20, because you don't know what Stanford's going to do. Oregon State's ahead of them. You got to think Florida's going to host over them. LSU's ahead of them. Old Dominion didn't put in a bid, so they're ahead of them. Oklahoma State didn't put in a bid to host, so there's like 4 teams immediately above them that didn't put in to host, so that automatically gets them to 17, and then you take Fairfield out, that automatically gets them into the top 16. So I could see them going 0-3 and moving up and hosting anyway, and I could see them being the lone flag carrier in the state of Florida this year and having all Florida teams in Gainesville in a new ballpark. NCAA is really big on that. Well, we've never had a regional in this ballpark. They're always about going to new places, and so that would be, even though it's Gainesville, it would be a new place and a good way for the Gators to show off their new stadium. And hey, maybe somebody from the NCAA could go there and get some fried key lime pie. That's one of their specialties they serve in the ballpark now. It drew rave reviews all season long, but the last telecast on the Florida network Saturday night, Mick Hubert and Nick Belmonte, who've been doing Florida Gator baseball for 35 years, he said that was the end of their 35th year together doing Gator baseball. And Scott Strickland was on, their AD was on in the middle innings, and he graciously brought him up some fried key lime pie. And Nick goes, "Oh, I've had this." He said, "This, you can't get this anywhere." But that's certainly a new twist at the Gator ballpark, the fried key lime pie, and it did look good. So maybe get to go to Gainesville one year and try that out.
Yeah, I'm all in for that. That settles it. And I think one other thing we've established is both of us can be bribed by food.
Oh, I think everybody can. I think everybody's got a bribery level at some point. But yeah, you offer me chicken wings or a ribeye steak, and I'm pretty much there. So I'm good with that.
Well, I want to take a detour for just a second before we get back to the SEC. TCU is going to be interesting where the committee seeds it, because I look at that resume, TCU 5 in the RPI, but you dig in and most of TCU's damage has been done 2 places, A, on the road, and B, against what, if this were basketball, we would call NIT level teams, I guess is a good way to put it. Because you look at the top end teams, number 1 Arkansas on a neutral field, TCU lost that. Texas 2 in the RPI, TCU lost 2 of 3. It did beat Mississippi State 7 on a neutral site, lost 2 of 3 to Texas Tech, which is 8, lost a game to 12 Ole Miss, swept Oklahoma State, which is 14, and lost 2 of 3 to Gonzaga, which is 17. I know the wins, it swept Baylor, which is 31. It swept Liberty, which is 32, both those at home. And then you get into that next tier where TCU did a lot of damage against Kansas, Oklahoma, and UTSA. So I just think when you start comparing that resume, in case you're wondering about Vanderbilt, Arkansas, well, not Arkansas at this point, because I just think that Arkansas is going to end up probably 1 or 2 at the worst, and I have a hard time seeing Arkansas dropping out of 1. But like if you're Tennessee, Mississippi State, wondering how are we going to stack up with TCU, I think once you start digging into the resume, that comparison is going to become favorable for those SEC teams.
Yeah, I think so. They do have some good wins. I mean, you look at them and you say, well, they have a 3-game sweep of Liberty. Liberty's a pretty good club in the A-Sun. They just had a really great series with Kennesaw State this past weekend to decide the A-Sun regular season, and now they're playing best of 3 series this weekend. 1 versus 8, 2-7, 3-6, 4-5. They're playing best 2 out of 3s to go to the 4-team tournament next weekend to decide the A-Sun championship. And they lost 2 out of 3 at home to Gonzaga, who is in line to host a tournament. I think even some of those, going 4-2 in those games because in the committee's eyes, well, these teams made the tournament, are going to make the tournament. And you kind of look at Ole Miss, State, Arkansas, Texas Tech. I mean, there are some teams in the Big 12 that, Baylor's three wins over them. Oklahoma, they swept them, but Oklahoma's RPI's in the 60s. Lost 2 out of 3 to Texas Tech. The really good teams they had trouble with. They did sweep Oklahoma State, beat Kansas 2 out of 3, swept West Virginia's RPI's in the 110s, lost 2 out of 3 to Texas. And then the killer series this past weekend, losing 2 out of 3 at home to UL Monroe. So they are an interesting team. Just kind of looking at them, you just have to wonder where they're going to be. Are they going to be a host? One of the 16 hosts. If I'm looking at the 20, they might not be there simply because they've got one in Texas and they've got one in Lubbock, and TCU may be, one of those that hits the road just simply because their wins don't stack up with Florida. Their wins don't stack up with Ole Miss, Mississippi State. They just don't stack up, and they have some bad series losses. And I think Monroe, some of that I think could hurt them down the stretch.
All right, let's finish up with the rest of the SEC. We've got 3 teams that are, I guess, on the bubble. I think Kentucky has played its way out for now, unless it were to pull a miracle at Vanderbilt. So what we're talking is LSU, Alabama, Georgia. LSU obviously in the best position at this point, in spite of that 11-16 record, 18 RPI. Very winnable series at A&M. You've got Alabama and Mississippi State. I think Alabama, with the series win, I think can probably play itself in this weekend. And then you got Georgia, which is hosting Ole Miss, traveling to Ole Miss. Again, I think Georgia probably needing a series win there. Not sure the Bulldogs had the pitching left after the injuries, but what do you make of those 3 clubs right now?
Well, it's interesting. Georgia 12-15, just kind of struggling down the stretch. I mean, they have that great series win over Vanderbilt. But as we mentioned yesterday, they have that not good series loss at home to Auburn. Auburn's first of 2 SEC series wins. I don't think Georgia can win the series with Ole Miss. I think 15-15 is a stretch for them to sweep. 14-16 is probably a stretch. They can get one to be 13-17. And I just don't know if this Georgia team at 13-17 can get in. I just don't think they have enough. They have a huge game tonight with Georgia Tech. We'll talk a little bit about the Tuesday night games. I'm usually not a big midweek guy, just, because sometimes you don't, you just throw off on those games and just try to get guys some work. But I think these games tonight are important for some teams, not only for tonight, but this may be the guy you pitch tonight that pitches next week for you in the tournament, and you need to see him do well. But I think it's a huge game tonight for Georgia against Georgia Tech at the Rusty C in Atlanta. And I just don't know, even if they beat Tech tonight, that gets them to 30, and they go 1-2, 31-22. But I think, what are they, 3-7? That would make them 5-9 in their last 14 games. I just don't know if that'd be enough to get Georgia in. I don't know if they can do enough without going to Hoover and making a serious run. Alabama and LSU is a little bit different to me. I think Alabama at 12-14, I don't want to put them in at 13 wins, 13-16 it would be. I know their RPI is good, and they have some good wins. They also have, they played good schedule, but they didn't beat a lot of these teams. You look at their SEC deal, they lost the series to Tennessee. They lost the series to Vanderbilt. They did not play Florida. They did not play South Carolina. They did not play Georgia. They won the series with Missouri, and they're the only Kentucky series win after Kentucky started the year 5-1 with wins over Missouri and Auburn. So Kentucky's only other series win that year came against Alabama. They lost the series to Arkansas. They lost the series to Ole Miss. They lost the series to LSU. And their other 2 series wins came against Auburn and Texas A&M. So you look at Missouri 3-0, Auburn 2-1, A&M 3-0. You got 8-1 against those teams. They're 4-13 against everybody else, including 2 losses to Kentucky. I think they've got to win the series and get to 14 and 15, and I think they might have to win a game in Hoover to get in. But I don't think they'll get in it. I know they won't get in at 12, and I don't know. Nobody knows except the committee. I feel like they will not get in at 12, and I do not think they will get in at 13. LSU, on the other hand, 13 and 17, and they will have won, 5 of their last 6 series, and could have won a series with South Carolina, blew a 2-0 lead in the last inning of game 2, and then the Gamecocks took game 3 and won the series. Have some good wins, pitching better, playing better. I like Marceau, Labus, and Hilliard. I think that's a good combination for them. They're better with DiGiacomo in the lineup. 2-1, 3-0 for LSU and A&M this weekend, and I certainly think they're in the conversation for the tournament. So LSU and Alabama is yes and maybe, and Georgia is probably not. If you're asking me right now how I think they're gonna shake out.
Okay, I'm going to tell you how I predicted this weekend, and with that, how the bracket would shape out if there are these outcomes. And feel free to take note of where you disagree, and we can play it out differently before we end the podcast with the midweek discussion. But here's what I've got happening this weekend. I've got Arkansas taking 2 or 3 from Florida. I've got Vanderbilt sweeping Kentucky and Nashville. I've got South Carolina at home taking 2 or 3 from Tennessee. I got Mississippi State going on the road, taking 2 or 3 at Alabama. I've got Ole Miss going to Georgia and taking 2. I've got LSU going to A&M and taking 2. And I've got Auburn going to Missouri and taking 2. If this is how this plays out, here's what you've got. You've got in the first round, number 6 Ole Miss facing 11 Kentucky, winner getting 3 Tennessee. Below that, you've got number 7 South Carolina taking on 10 LSU, winner taking 2 Vandy. You've got 8 Alabama and 9 Georgia, with the winner getting number 1 Arkansas on Wednesday. And then I've got Florida being the 5 seed facing 12 seed Auburn, with the winner taking number 4 Mississippi State.
And if it shakes out like that 8-9 game between Alabama and Georgia could literally be a
elimination game.
It really could. I mean, it really, really could. I don't have any disagreements with that. There's something, and I've still got a day and a half to weigh it out. There's just something about me that thinks Missouri's going to slip into this thing. I don't know why. I don't know. All they got to do is win the series.
Right.
And they got to win a home series against Auburn, and A&M, and they finish 9-21. Auburn finishes 9-21. And if A&M wins 2 out of 3 or LSU wins 2 out of 3 at A&M, they finish 9-21, and Missouri's in. There's just something. I don't know if it's because it's just the way the year is, because it's the year removed from COVID, but something really, really stupid is going to happen this weekend. And it's just going to really, everybody's going to go, oh, God, really? And that, to me, that's burning on me right now, that I think that the thing that's going to happen that's going to really shock everybody, and I may change my mind tomorrow, may change it back Thursday, but I think Missouri is going to get in as the 12th right now. And they may get blasted Thursday and Friday night and be way out of this thing. I don't know. Auburn's a really good road team. They've played better on the road than they have at home. But I think in just the wackiness of the way this season is, you got 5 teams still in contention for a division title. You got Florida can still finish anywhere from 1st to 7th in the league. And everybody wrote Missouri off about week 2 and go, they're the worst team in SEC history. And here they are with a series win away from making Hoover. And I just think something crazy is going to happen. And right now I'm going to hang my hat on Missouri winning a series in Columbia and making it to Hoover. But like I said, they may get beat 48-0 in 3 games. What do I know? But that's kind of what I'm looking at right now.
Yeah, and I think if you're the league, I think you want a lot of 2 out of 3 outcomes this weekend. I mean, your exceptions could be Vandy and Kentucky. You know, I don't know that makes a difference if Vanderbilt wins 2 or 3, because I don't think Kentucky is going to get in, barring it going to Nashville and sweeping, which might put, again, Vandy in a little bit of peril as a national seed. I think you're perfectly happy from a league standpoint with the Arkansas and Tennessee series, Arkansas having Florida, Tennessee having South Carolina, going 2-1 either way. It probably benefits the league a little bit more if Carolina gets 2, because, again, I think then at that point, hosting becomes a distinct possibility. Tennessee, whether it wins 2 or 3, either way, is going to be a national seed. State's one where you probably want State to win 2 out of 3, although if it's Alabama, State probably going to be in there anyway. So maybe that's what you want, because then Alabama probably gets in the tournament. State is going to host either way, unless maybe it gets swept. Even then, I can't see State dropping out. Florida, Arkansas, that's one where if the Gators can take 2, it certainly solidifies Florida's position as a host. Arkansas is not going to get knocked out of being a national seed. I don't know that you want that one going 3-0 for either team for that reason. Ole Miss at Georgia, I could see that working either way, that if Georgia wins that series, that puts Georgia back in the NCAA picture. Ole Miss might cost the Rebels a host, but I don't know. So anyway, I look up and down the list and I see 2-1 series outcomes in a lot of ways, kind of being what you want in terms of getting a lot of teams in the dance and keeping those hosting spots solid. But anyway, Barry, let's talk midweek before we end. What catches your eye today?
Well, obviously, the first thing, we touched on it just a little bit, is Georgia Tech, tonight in Atlanta, 7 Eastern start. I think that's a big game for both teams in their NCAA hopes. I think that's an important game for Georgia, that they could say that they finished 3-1 against Clemson and Georgia Tech this year. Not a lot else jumps out there at me. Kansas at Missouri is the SEC network game. Obviously a rival from past Big 12 and Big 8 days. I think it's kind of an interesting deal. And I was trying to figure out a way to get this nugget in on Kansas, because you never mention Kansas in baseball. But since Kansas is playing at Missouri tonight and it is on the network, we will not see him because he's a weekend guy. But I wanted to mention Eli Davis from Kansas, who is one of their starting weekend pitchers. Mr. Davis has had the dubious extinction of the last 2 weeks of being involved in no-hitters, one that didn't go so well for him and one that did. 2 weeks ago, Kansas was no-hit at home by Oklahoma State, 19-0. Mr. Davis started the game and gave up 7 runs in a third of an inning and was the losing pitcher. And then the next week, he came back and he made a start at home against Kansas State, and he threw a no-hitter. Albeit 7 innings, he no-hit Kansas State in a 10-0 game. So in a span of 7 days at the same ballpark in back-to-back starts, he is no-hit, and he throws a no-hitter. And I thought that was kind of interesting. I don't recall seeing that a lot in college baseball or even in the major leagues. I mean, Vandermeer is the only guy that's ever spun back-to-back no-hitters, but I thought that was kind of an interesting little tidbit to see what's going on there with Kansas and Missouri. He won't pitch tonight. Jack State's at Mississippi State, former Mississippi State assistant coach Jim Case taking the Gamecocks into Starkville tonight. And FIU at Vanderbilt's kind of interesting. I'm assuming FIU is at Western Kentucky this weekend to close out Conference USA. I haven't looked at the schedule. I guess I should have, but that's kind of a long way to go to play a one-gamer. So I'm assuming they're either at Middle or at Western Kentucky this weekend, and that's how that game came about. And of course, Kentucky, Tennessee at home, Auburn's at home against North Alabama, one of the worst Division I teams in the country, trying to clinch the NCAA championship this year for the worst run differential in college baseball. it's like minus 290 something, and they're by far leading the country in that. And they did not, I don't think, make their conference tournament, and so they won't be playing. I think this is the last game that they will be playing, as I don't think they qualified in the Atlantic Sun playoffs and stuff. So this could be the last game for UNA tonight. So some interesting games. Ole Miss home against UT Martin. I think the biggest thing for the SEC teams, Kentucky, Auburn, Georgia, maybe South Carolina, LSU. Some of these teams that look like they're going to play on Tuesday next week. This could be your guy you see next Tuesday in Hoover. And I think a lot of coaches may treat it like that. Okay, some teams may have to win, and it's hard to bring the guy back from Thursday to Tuesday. So you only got a couple of days, but I think it's an important game tonight that if you can get your guy in the game tonight, get him 4 or 5 and stretch him out. I mean, a lot of times they pitch 8 guys and in a piece, or 9 guys and in a piece. Maybe tonight's the night you go, okay, I need to see what you got, because I need you next week in Hoover, and you know that. And let's see how tonight goes. And you may be that guy Tuesday next week in Hoover. And Vanderbilt may use the same guy tonight, and he may be their Wednesday guy next week, because I don't think they would take Kumar Rocker and Jack Leiter off their regular schedule in Hoover and start a guy on Wednesday that started on Thursday. I think they'd keep them in the same spot. Same probably for Ole Miss and Mississippi State as well. So the pitching tonight is key for a lot of these SEC teams. And how do they work their staffs tonight with only one day off for a short weekend? Because you pitch tonight, if you start, you're probably not going to be available till Friday or Saturday because you got a shorter week. And then who they start tonight and put on the mound tonight, is this the guy you're looking at to be the guy next Tuesday in Hoover to get you through game 1 there? So that's why there's some intrigue tonight with the games. And there's 10 of them. There's a lot of games tonight, really, to wrap up non-conference play.
Well, we'll have more baseball to digest tomorrow. Tomorrow we'll probably talk more about Player of the Year and Pitcher of the Year. We do our 14s every week, ranking pitchers 1 to 14 of the best resumes of pitchers in the league so far. And then we do the same thing with hitters and DHs. And Barry, you and I are also excited. Next week, we're going to roll out our all SEC teams. And we're not going to stop with 1. We're not going to stop with 2. We're not even going to stop with 3. We're going to pick our 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th team all SEC teams. We're going to include 3 starting pitchers and a reliever in each of those. So I know you and I have already started the groundwork on that. Looking forward to rolling that out probably next Monday. And I know that's something we'll have just a ton of fun with.
You said when you first told me about it, doing the teams, I was afraid you were going to tell me we were going to have 14 teams, because we do a lot of things with the number 14.
Don't give me any ideas, Barry.
because of the website and all, and that will be a fun task to try to come up with the top 4 teams in the SEC. And also next week we're working on to unveil that'll come out Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, somewhere in that. I've already started working on that too. The 14 best SEC games of the season. I think there's probably one out there that jumps off everybody's page. That's the no-brainer. And then what we'll call the 14 best moments, or 14 best whatever of a series. It doesn't necessarily have to be a game. It could be over the series. Obviously Will Frizzell's 5 home runs against Ole Miss is on the initial list. The Evan Russells and the TJ Collette 3 home run games, and the Jack Leiter no-hitter, things like that. That's kind of things we're looking for. But hey, shoot us a tweet if you're listening and you want to make a case for your team to have a top 14 game or a top 14 moment. Let us know, and we'll certainly consider everything. I hope we get the best 14 out there, and we'll probably miss a couple, and there'll be some debate on that, but that'll be fun to do as well, to come up with the best 14 games and the best 14 moments. I think the games are going to be a little bit harder than the moments. And we're just doing SEC versus SEC. So when you don't see the Mississippi State no-hitter on there against Kent State, or Robert Moore's cycle in the midweek, when you don't see those on there, don't get discouraged, because we're only doing it SEC versus SEC. Which we may alter that just a little bit in the moments, because I'm torn with that right now because Landon Sims certainly needs to be on in the moment. And I can't think of a greater moment for him than his debut at Mississippi State when they trot him in out of the bullpen with the bases loaded and no outs against Texas. And he gets out of the inning with 3 straight strikeouts and leaves the bases loaded and strikes out 10 of the 12 guys he faces. That's to me, that's going to be hard to leave that off that list. So we may have to modify our rules just a little bit because I think, to me, that's the debut for him, and that set the tone for him for the entire season. When he did that, that showed everybody this guy's legit. This guy can get it done, and I think that's certainly something that we may have to modify the rules a little bit, and we make up the rules so we can change them as we want to. We don't have to take them before the committee, so that may be something that's on there. But I think that legitimized and that made the college baseball world very much aware of Landon Sims.
Hey, we are the committee. So when we appeal to the committee, we know where that appeal is going to land. But, I feel like, when we were a kid, my mom had this calendar that she put up on the 1st of December, and there was a little hoop. There were like all these little hoops on the calendar, and you'd hang a candy cane on each one. And every day you got closer to Christmas, you'd take a candy cane out and eat it. I feel like we've got this countdown calendar. I don't know if it's to Hoover or to the NCAA tournament, whatever, maybe with chicken wings, and we just take a chicken wing off every day as we get closer to what feels like a baseball Christmas, Barry.
Yeah. The opening day is an exciting day. The, first day of the SEC season is exciting. The first day of Hoover, selection Monday, and then the first day of the regionals, and then the super regionals, and then the College World Series, and then it's over, and then it just becomes real shallow and hollow after that because you got to wait, so long to see other, college baseball games. But very fortunate this year to see a lot of really good teams and a lot of really good games, and it's exciting where we are. It's exciting that we enter the last weekend of the regular season with 5 teams still with a chance to win the divisions. I guess even Ole Miss, I don't count them, but I guess even 6, something crazy could happen, and they could share the West with State or Arkansas. So 6 teams really, and 3 teams battling for the last spot in Hoover going into the last weekend of the season. And if A&M were to sweep LSU, they could knock LSU completely out of Hoover as well. So 10 of your 14 teams are playing for a division title or a shot in Hoover, and the other 4 teams are trying to position themselves, for better NCAA seeds or host spots or different things like that. So you look at this weekend, you go, well, that series doesn't mean anything. Well, that couldn't be further from the truth, because every game played this weekend is going to matter, and it's going to be amplified even more because it's the last 3 games of the season. And you can't get better next week because you might not be playing next week. So you got to give it all you got this week, and each pitch, be magnified tremendously. And I think it'd be a great weekend, and I'm looking forward to Thursday. I'm sad to see Saturday come, but I'm looking forward to Thursday and get into the last weekend of the season and shape this thing out into a tournament next week, and be a little bit more clear as to who might get in the NCAA tournament and who might be hosting, and who the league champion is.
All right. Been fun today, Barry, and lots more fun to come. Like I said, we got ratings coming up. Just all kinds of content we'll be pumping out in the next couple of weeks. If you got suggestions or anything like that or questions, tweet them at us at 14 Southeastern. Be sure and follow our work at southeastern14.com. Anyway, thank you for listening to the Tuesday edition of the 14 podcast. I'm your host, Chris Lee. We'll see you again on Wednesday with another episode.